Hello, guys, and welcome to this episode of the Limitless Landscapers Podcast. I'm Paula, the Landscapers Coach, and your host. And today I'm talking about job costings and, in particular, the job costing mistakes that are probably killing your margin in your landscaping business. So, if you're interested in this topic, let's go to the show. Welcome to the Limitless Landscapers Podcast, the podcast for owner-led landscaping businesses who want more profit, more control, and ultimately less stress. I'm Paula Warman, the Landscapers Coach, and after scaling a landscaping business to a team of 15, winning 38 industry awards, closing it when overheads became unsustainable, and rebuilding lean and profitable, I've learned this. Turnover doesn't build freedom. Profit, systems, and smart decisions do. And that's exactly what we talk about here on the Limitless Landscapers Podcast, where limitless isn't larger, it's sustainability. Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Limitless Landscapers Podcast. How are you guys? I am back with the brick wall behind me. I feel way more at home in this location. Just sometimes it hasn't been possible with family life to be able to film in this. So I am back. How has your March been going? I can't believe we are already into the third month of the year, which is pretty scary. Have you thought about how you're doing towards your goals that you might have set towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year? Not sure. Have you thought about how you're actually doing this year as we move into April soon and Easter time? I wanted to talk to you about job costings and some of the mistakes you could be making, because this is your chance to rectify that. If you are making some mistakes, then we can look at it, we can rectify it, we can put some systems in place and plans in place, and hopefully make sure that you're going to achieve your goals for this year. Hopefully you're going to finish this year in profit and the business continues. So first things first, I'm going to start with a story, really. And it's about jobs that you've done potentially. I mean, for me, it's any jobs that have won an award tends to happen like this. So the client is generally thrilled. The job looks exceptional. It wins awards. It looks like a fantastic project on paper. But when you look at the numbers after, so when you finish the job and you review your job and your costings and what's gone on behind the scenes, the margin has almost disappeared. Labor overran, materials were more expensive, there were small things that weren't accounted for, or even big things that weren't accounting for. And if you're not looking at your job costings, ideally during a job, not just after a job, then you're not running your business properly, because you are gambling with your own profits and your own margins. And essentially, you are going to eventually lose, because ultimately, if you don't keep an eye on your job costings, the similar sort of thing can happen. I say it happened on most of our award-winning projects because you are working to such an exceptional standard that you tend to overspend time because the perfectionism kicks in. And I think a lot of other landscapers who have done particularly large projects that have won awards are probably saying they're probably not their most profitable. So it's a common theme. But essentially, it can often be a common theme across the board, award-winning or not. And essentially, this is one of the biggest things that cost me my business, because we weren't on top of the job costings and we had someone inputting the incorrect figures into job costings, and I trusted them and believed them, which was on me. But essentially, job costings are what can help anchor your business and make sure you're improving all the time. Now, just because you have one job that the job costings haven't gone well, the margins have eroded, doesn't mean that you can't take into the next job the lessons you've learned from that and improve and improve and improve. So where do we as landscapers underestimate job costings? Well, the number one thing is the labor, because often it can take more time than you've anticipated. Now, this could be a costing or quoting error where you've underestimated how long it's going to take, particularly if you have not so easy access, for instance. You might be waiting for materials. I know this happened to me and my team on multiple jobs where we have just been simply waiting for materials, which is a cost to labor and time. And obviously, it will erode your profit. What about when they make changes? When the client decides they're going to make changes, that impacts on the time you spend on that project and the time that you anticipated spending on that project. So you have to always be aware of your labor time. And the other thing to bear in mind is travel time. Have you considered that and how that will impact how much work will get done in a single day? What are your parameters? Where do you travel to? And if you take on a job that's further afield, do you add significant cost to the customer for that? An extra day here and there might not feel like much initially. However, over months, years, that can make a significant dent in your margin. The second place where we can lose money and lose margins is plant and equipment hire. You feel like you've already paid for stuff. So you've already paid for equipment that you might have bought, but you haven't thought about wear and tear. You haven't thought about that even though you've already paid for it, it's not actually free to use. You might not have even anticipated fuel costs, the hire of any extra equipment you need, the maintenance, the depreciation. I could go on, but you have to be aware of your plant and equipment costs. Even if you've bought and purchased it, it's still not free. Then we need to look at material wastage. And the reality of this is that you can overorder, underorder, you can have breakages, you can have huge delivery costs if you're not on top of the delivery cost side of things, and also price fluctuations. You may have quoted someone 6 months ago and prices have gone up. I mean, this is particularly true as we're going into April because a lot of suppliers will increase prices. And you may have quoted someone a large job, you quoted them in January, they've accepted it, you haven't ordered the materials yet because they haven't paid a deposit and you're not starting till April. But if you then wait till April to order and that price has gone up by 1%, 2%, 3%, 5%, 10%, that is all money that's coming off your margin, not the client's pocket, because they're still going to get the same job. You're just going to be paying more for it. So you've got to bear in mind that small percentages add up all the time. I was speaking to a client today and they've taken on a showroom and storage space. And so they were asking about potentially buying pallets of cement and stuff like that they use every day. And I said, well, if you can get fixed price on that from your preferred supplier and it's cheaper, then even if it's a couple of pound a bag cheaper, that's going to have impact over time on the jobs that you're using it on, because you would have costed that significantly higher to the client. So you've got to think of these little things. Every small thing adds up. And time that never gets charged for. This is the huge thing in the landscaping world. And we rarely, as landscapers, although I absolutely say this is a no-no, we very rarely charge for our time and site visits. Okay. It's kind of a thing in the industry where it's embarrassing to charge for it. You might not feel confident charging for it, but essentially a lot of people say free quotes, free site visits, and off we go. You don't charge for design revisions, or you don't put a cap on there. So I would always suggest that you put a clear boundary that they could have 2 revisions for free or included in the design fee. But we very rarely do that. Something that I have never charged for, and I doubt any one of you have charged for, let me know if you have, is quotation revisions. How many times the client asks you to revise their quote? Maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I haven't ever charged for that time, and I bet you haven't either. So quote revisions, which can take significant amounts of time, particularly on larger, more detailed projects. Project management, very rarely, very, very rarely have we ever charged for project management time. We've done it when we've worked with designers and the clients asked us to project manage other trades coming in so that we can make sure our time's managed properly. We've never charged for that. Client communication. Now, if you get an annoying client that needs you every 5 minutes, that's texting you. Now, I know all of you have probably had one of these. They text you day and night, don't care if it's the weekend or not, and they expect an answer. Well, do we ever charge for that? No, but the solicitors and lawyers, yes, they do, and they're allowed to. But as landscapers, no, we have to be at their beck and call, but for no compensation. And one of the biggest margin killers is the time that we never invoice for. And just saying that list out loud, there is such a lot of time we haven't invoiced for ourselves. And I think you would feel the same. Now, what about pricing? Let's talk about pricing. So pricing decisions often come from fear. So a lot of the time, I will see clients, and my husband himself have done this. They have the fear of losing the job. So they really want the job, or they might not necessarily want the job, but they've got a space in their diary that they need to fill. So that's generally the two things that will decide this. And so they fear overpricing, or pricing correctly will lead to them not getting the job they need or want. And so you end up pricing from that emotional perspective. The other reason is comparing with competitors. Often we will price to competitors to make sure we are comparable in some way. I would never suggest doing this. I tend not to do this, but essentially that can draw you into an emotional pricing trap as well. Or you're feeling uncomfortable. The third reason why you might fall into a bad trap with pricing is that you're feeling uncomfortable charging more. Now, a lot of people I've spoken to, when it's come to charging for site visits, they don't feel comfortable doing so they won't do it. And that's fine. But you need to be aware that all of these things are just emotional reactions. They're not facts. So you need to go back to fact-based pricing. It's not emotional. It's got to be purely mathematical. It's got to be based on facts, not your emotions that will draw you to do other things, or when a client pulls on maybe a heartstring somewhere, or they make you feel guilty, and then you tend to give them a discount or something. That has happened in our world before. And that's when margins slowly disappear. So you need to make sure you have complete financial clarity around your pricing. And you need to think about how you can build your margins intentionally, not reactively, not emotionally, but intentionally. And instead of looking at it in the way of, what do I need to charge in order to win this project? You need to start looking at it as, what margin does this project need to bring in order for my landscaping business to continue to grow, survive, and thrive? And you've got to work backwards from this. And the margin funds all the things that you don't necessarily think about or see on a daily basis. And that is your overheads. And now these can escalate out of control as you grow a business, particularly in the landscaping industry. You need to think about what other areas of growth you are doing in the business that might need to be funded, i.e., are you buying some of your equipment? Are you getting more labor in on jobs? Are you wanting to do more advertising in order to get more work? All of these things are part of the growth of the business, and this is where margins can fund that. What about investment? Do you need to invest in the business, or are you investing in other ventures that will generate more income for you in the future? Margins can fund that. What about stability? You need to make sure your business is stable in order to grow, thrive, and survive, particularly in this climate where clients are not spending as willy-nilly as they used to. They're thinking more about their buying decisions. I think we all are, in all honesty. And so you want to make sure your business is stable. The only way you can make your business stable is to keep an eye on the money, and margins build the profit and therefore the stability of your business. You also want a salary. You don't want to be not paying yourself. Otherwise, you're not going to have a house to live in. You're not going to have food on the table. So you need to make sure that your margins on every project are covering your salary and what you want to earn as a business owner. And so simple things that can improve your costings is tracking all of your job costings is the key, but basically tracking your labor. So what did you quote for labor-wise versus what did you spend on labor? Or days versus days, hours versus however you want to do it. You need to start looking at each job that you've completed recently, maybe your last 2 or 3, and see what the planned hours were in the quote and what the actual hours were. You will begin to see patterns, and you'll begin to see if it's a problem with the quote side or if it's a problem with the execution and the labor side. The second thing you need to do is to build your contingency into your quote. So you need to add a 5 to 15% buffer. Now, you might go, I'm going to do 5, you might say 7, you might say 10, you might say 15, but you need to build a contingency buffer within every quote you do that will cover if you have delays, if you have waste, and if you have variations happen, whether that be variations on ground. That's happened to me before when we thought it was good ground, but it was clay. It could be variations that the client decides. So they're going to want extra work, which you charge for, but it's going to extend the time, which you will also charge for, but you haven't anticipated when you took the job on. Number 3 is you need to review jobs after completion as soon as possible. And that means potentially sitting down with your teams and asking, did we make what we expected? Where did the costs increase and why? And what can change next time? And the key here is for you to sit down as a business owner and reflect on it from your own perspective and have a look. Have long, hard thoughts and questions with yourself, whether it was you at the quote stage that's done it wrong. But also then get your team involved with why did that happen and how can we make improvements going forward? Because you will notice patterns, they will notice patterns, and then you can nip it in the bud as quickly as possible when you go on to your next job. Because what did I say? When you, even if things go wrong, you're learning from that and you can improve on the next job, but you have to do it quickly. Otherwise, the next job will take the same problems into it if you haven't addressed it. Okay. And, you know, from my experience in running a landscaping business for 15 years, one of the biggest lessons I learned was, number one, that the biggest, most beautiful landscaping projects do not necessarily earn the most profit. That was one thing. So, you know, the big, shiny, beautiful jobs are not necessarily the best ones to make most profits on. And the second thing was it took, when we started looking at job costings and seeing where the margins were slipping, that I could then realize what was going wrong. And once I started understanding where things were going wrong, we could implement change, we could make better informed decisions and improve the next project and the next quote and the next team that we took on and the next phase of growth. It does impact on everything you do. So job costings are key to surviving as a landscaping business. And if you don't know your true costs, you're not really pricing. You're just guessing. You're just guessing your profit. You're guessing everything, because you need to know your true costs. You need to know your finances. You need to know your numbers. I will keep banging on about that, but that is the backbone of any business. And we all know that landscaping businesses can like grow out of control. So this is really important. So I'm going to give you 3 things that you need to do and take some action. Number 1, I need you to think about and know your average job margin. Do you know that? If you don't, go and find out. Do you track when your labor overruns? Yes, no. If you don't, you need to start. Do you review your jobs after completion by yourself, with your team, or both? If you don't, you need to start. So you need to start here, and then let's look at more things as we go on. I'll be doing more and more podcasts around these things that will help you with your business. If you've got any questions, give me a shout. But if you want some simple help with numbers, pricing for profit, drop me an email. I have a freebie. Drop me an email with the word PDF and I'll send the freebie over to you. If you want any further help, if you want a coach to help you grow your landscaping business, drop me an email, coach, and I can book you in for a free call. But essentially, I'm going to bring it back to the reason why this is like really important. Landscaping businesses do not struggle because they have a lack of work. That is generally not the problem. We did not close our business due to lack of work. We had lots of work in the pipeline. We struggle as a landscaping business because the work you're winning is not profitable enough. And that is so true. And that goes back to making sure you have a handle on the numbers, making sure you are quoting correctly, and making sure you are constantly reviewing your costs, your team, your labor, everything really, to make sure that you're getting the margins you need to run a successful, stable, profitable business. So that's me for today. I'm the Landscapers Coach. If you need any help, drop me an email, paula@thelandscaperscoach.co.uk. Put the word PDF if you want the freebie, and I will see you on the next episode of the Limitless Landscapers Podcast.